For day 4 of the 31 films of Halloween, we are going with a classic, A Nightmare on Elm Street. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit the subscribe button to never miss a video. We have daily film content, including movie reviews, movie news, and so much more. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button to never miss a video. For day 4 of the 31 films of Halloween, we are talking about the classic, A Nightmare on Elm Street, written and directed by Wes Craven. Now, this film has always held a special place in my heart. It's one of the first films, not the first horror film I've ever seen, but it's one of the first. It's one of the first franchises I've ever watched. Well, sort of. First franchise technically was Amityville Horror. For my first ever horror film I ever seen was Amityville Horror Dollhouse, which is like the 7th installment straight to VHS. Came out in like the late 90s, early 2000s. That was my first ever horror film, but A Nightmare on Elm Street was the first iconic franchise, I'd say, because Dollhouse, it was so far down the line in the franchise of Amityville Horror. It's not really an Amityville Horror film. It's like, I mean, it is, but yeah, still holds a special place in my heart. However, but it's just, I wouldn't consider that to be a introduction to iconic horror icons. Now, Nightmare on Elm Street, on the other hand, it was one of the first films I remember watching after Amityville Dollhouse. We were like, I was 8 years old. After watching Amityville Dollhouse, I just fell in love with horror films. A buddy of mine who I actually watched with him, his parents, and his sister, we just kind of, me and him just kind of like fell in love with horror films. We just started like raiding his parents' movie closet, because they had, well, not closets, it was more like cabinets they had above their sectional in their basements. And we just start raiding everything and just trying to dig for horror films. And one of the films we ended up watching next was A Nightmare on Elm Street. And it was terrifying, but in the best possible way. And I just remember just falling in love with the character of Freddy Krueger, and we just fell in love with the films. And I remember shortly thereafter, I got my mom to actually buy me the entire box set of A Nightmare on Elm Street. So, like I said, Nightmare on Elm Street has always been one of my favorite franchises. So, with that being said, let's jump into it. If you haven't already seen A Nightmare on Elm Street, it's one of those films where I feel like it's a great time to start now. I feel like every horror fan who is established has seen the iconic Nightmare on Elm Street. Now, if you're a newer horror fan or someone who is getting into horror, or for a younger viewer who is trying to find their way into horror, started to dabble in, but haven't really jumped back into the old school horror, Nightmare on Elm Street is the perfect example of a horror film that also has a comedic side. Now, the original Nightmare on Elm Street is a little less comedic, and you really don't get that more witty Freddy Krueger until the sequels. Until like Dream Warriors, which is Nightmare on Elm Street 3. Then you got Dream Masters is 4, and then Dream Child 5. So you kind of get more of the witty, cheesy kind of Freddy Krueger. The first film is a lot more dark and gritty, but it's not as dark and gritty as Craven's earlier films, such as Last House on the Left. This one was actually, in interviews, Wes Craven actually talked about, his inspiration was for this film was he actually read an article about a guy who was terrified of going to sleep, and he actually died of sleep apnea. He literally had like a coffee pot under his bed. He was just terrified of going to sleep because of this nightmare he kept having. And that's what kind of inspired him to write A Nightmare on Elm Street. So those of you who don't know, the film is pretty much about Freddy Krueger, who is a demon or a he was a child molester who the parents of Elm Street burned alive because the law enforcement kind of messed up somewhere along the lines in his arrest, and he kind of fell through the cracks and got out of he won his court case because of a technicality. So the parents of Elm Street burned him alive and buried his bones, and then he came back to haunt their children in their dreams and then kill them. Now, again, this is one of those films where it's, if you don't wake up, the tagline is, if you don't wake up screaming, you won't wake up at all. So he pretty much attacks and kills and slashes the teenagers in their dreams. So that's pretty much the storyline about him trying to kill off all of the kids of Elm Street. a pretty straightforward slasher. Kind of gets into more of the supernatural, whereas in the early 80s, you still had Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, who were still technically not supernatural, and they didn't really become supernatural beings until their later sequels, whereas Freddy Krueger started off as a supernatural being and was always that way throughout his entire series. I'd say Nightmare on Elm Street is probably one of my favorites. And this first one, again, just really creates an iconic character, one that has become so beloved as the actor who plays Freddy Krueger, Robert Englund. They even did a reboot in 2010. It did not go over well. A lot of fans just really did not adapt to the new storyline and the new arc that they tried to portray as Nightmare on Elm Street, which I can understand. Like, I was so excited for the new Nightmare on Elm Street. When it first came out, I remember vividly that weekend it opened, and I was looking forward to it, even though I had this feeling that it just wasn't going to be good. Like, I was hopeful, but it just didn't live up to the story. It didn't live up to the vision in which, or the version of a Nightmare on Elm Street that I grew up watching, and it just wasn't Robert Englund, and he just could not take the mantle. With that being said, if you haven't seen Nightmare on Elm Street, definitely go see it. It is a fantastic film, one that I think I'm going to have to start watching every Halloween along with the Scream films, because I feel like it's one of those films that are so iconic, but yet I've seen it so many times as a kid, but I don't watch it as often enough as I should in recent years. And if you are looking to watch it again, they actually just re-released it in 4K. I have not seen the 4K yet. I still have to pick it up, but I'm hearing great things about the transfer. I still only have the Blu-ray box set that came out a few years ago, but I'm hearing the 4K transfer is amazing. If you haven't already seen it or haven't watched it yet this holiday season, looking to gain the 4K, I know I am. Apparently, it's really great. If you happen to pick it up, comment below, let me know. What are your thoughts? And with that being said, we're going to end this video with, what is your favorite Nightmare on Elm Street? Comment below, let me know.